Hey gang, coming to you from Calumet, Michigan. We are in the Upper Peninsula, mining country, copper mining country. We've been here many times, and what you see behind me is here we're at the center of town is a famous, well, maybe an infamous monument back from 1913. This is the story of the Italian Hall disaster, a very sad and tragic event. Many of you have probably heard this story. We're going to spend most of our time at the cemetery. I'll give a brief overview of what happened for those of you that haven't heard the story. We go back to 1913. But even before 1913, the Calumet and Hecla mining company emerged as the big copper mining company here, and how this town was originally built. They pretty much owned everything and the workers. And the workers were really working under some brutal conditions. And they were getting worse. They say that there were 12 men injured a week and 1 man killed a week. It got that bad. Most of the people here were from Finland. There were Italians, there were Cornish. We've talked about the Cornish that came from Cornwall, England, because the mines there were shutting down, and they all came here. They were really a lot of the first to get here and very sophisticated, so they got a lot of the best positions, where those like the Finns, they were dredging, they were down deep, and they would have to haul the ore up and the drilling and all the dangerous stuff, along with the Italians and Irish and some others. It wasn't just the Finns, but they were predominantly and still here today, the descendants. It's a lot of Finland here. But going back to those times, there was a lot of conflict because they were forming a union. It was the Western Federation. A man came in here who organized the union, and there would be a lot of conflict, of course, as typical. The mine and the owners, the Calumet and Hecla, they would hire detective agencies, strike breakers, roughnecks, prize fighters, if you will, try to break the strike up. And it went on for several months in 1913. And by the time Christmas was coming, just to get right to that, it wasn't going anywhere for the strikers. And these families had no money, they could barely survive, and the Western Federation Union, and there was the woman leader, they put together a Christmas show at the Italian Hall. They rented it out. And they were we're not gonna let all the kids have a Christmas with no gifts and no celebration. It was really bad. So they rented out the hall. There must have been anywhere from 400 to 500, maybe 600 people crammed in there. That actually, what you see back there is what is left of the entrance to the hall, and that's going to have a big part of the story. It was torn down in 1980, so they're up there, and it is reminiscent. The stage, the kids would come up, and there was music. Santa Claus was up there, and they would each get a little gift. It might be mittens, might be a hat, simple things. Reminiscent in Chicago, when I was 5, 6 years old, my grandpa worked for Teletype and A.B. Dick there, and Lane Tech High School. This was not something that was uncommon. These Christmas shows for the kids, and you go on stage and you get your gift. Oh my gosh, the memories. Well, these memories would be bad because they're all crammed in there, and at the height of the party, somebody, and they believe it was an anti-union guy, there were witnesses after the fact that said he yelled fire. And of course it was in English, and people that knew English could translate it, and it just turned into complete chaos. Well, what happened was they all ran for the stairs. Now the stairs were not wide, and you can see that's where it came out on the street, and there were 2 doors that opened out, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was, and I'll tell you as a registered architect, I can see this, is there was no landing. It was 14 feet up And the stairs were very steep. Like today we have codes where the risers, which is the part of the step that goes up, can only be 7.5 to 8 inches, and then the tread, and there has to be a certain ratio. And then you have to have landings every so many. Well, this was not only steep, but there was no landing. Think of almost like a coal chute where you go in and you just go down. Well, what happened was the panic, and we have kids. We have 80% kids, ranging from babies to infants to 3 to 5-year-olds, 13-year-olds. It was horrendous because they're all being shoved down there with the parents that there's a fire. They tried to calm them down. It didn't work. And when you enter the stairwell, there was a left turn and it was dark and you go straight down. So everyone was just piling in. And it was just like a shaft where just bodies are going down. Few people got out the bottom. The doors were open. But once somebody fell pretty early, the next one, and then it started the pile up. Kids on the bottom. I think that there were, and there's different counts, but I counted from, and I gotta thank Find a Grave, because a lot of this information go to the cemetery, compiled by researchers in the community on Find a Grave. But I had 12 adults, somewhere around 12 adults. The rest were kids, those under 20. So they form this crush at the bottom, and it gets worse and worse. And within minutes, the people that got out of there first, got to the call box, to the fire station. Within minutes, they got there. And they're standing at the door, and just imagine this crush of bodies, moaning, screaming, and at the bottom, and they're trying to pull them out. And they're down, they're wedged in, so you can't pull them out. They have to go up the fire escape and start at the top and start pulling the people out, laying them out flat. Some are gasping, some are dead, some are revived, many are not, many are already dead. And that was the horror of the scene. And that they salvaged here and relocated here before they tore it down. And we'll take a closer look. And as I look at that, that's only like 4 feet wide. It did have a double door, but it didn't matter. And it's just amazing when you think about that, the weight of all these bodies would just suffocate. So, well, they were little kids, imagine, at the bottom. There's probably many adults that were stuck in there that survived because they were adults and men. Who knows? We'll never know the exact number, but we do know the exact number of died, and that's 73, mostly kids, like I said. So it was pretty shameful what happened after that. They had the Citizens Committee, which was a sham committee the whole time, that was kind of the front for the strike breaking and the union breaking organization. That was the mining company behind all of that. And were trying to throw money at the families at the funerals, and the families would say that's blood money and refuse it. I've got an example of probably the main family this happened to. It was just really shameful. And what was most shameful was the lack of investigation that was done. The whole thing was hushed up. The union organizer, who really tried to be a hero, the man, he was basically beat up, almost killed, along with this associate, put on a train and kicked right out of town, said, if you ever come back, we're going to kill you. You're going to be dead. He went to Washington, and they finally, I don't know, it was a year or two later, got a federal investigation, and they did the investigation, and there were, I think, 6 witnesses to 12, 6 that said clearly the man who yelled fire had the Citizens Committee, the little white badge. So, but then it just, well, we can't find out who it is, and it was just forgotten. Well, it wasn't forgotten by the newspapers, but it was just hushed up, and here in town the same thing. So, pretty sad deal. So let's take a look at the monument here. And, we'll just start real quick here. And this is the woman I was talking about, Anna Klemek. Let's get out of her shadow here. She's the hero. Well, she tried to be a hero. She really was the real fighter here, the real person. Here's a picture of the Italian hall, and there you see the entry, and that's basically what you see right up here. Yep, there it is. 1908 it says. It's interesting, it says, in honor of the Italian Americans who contributed greatly to this community. Well, they should be honoring the people from Finland and some of the others that died, in my opinion. But yeah, this is all that's left. And as I look at this, it's maybe 4.5 feet wide, would be my guess. Here we have the names of all those that perished. Christmas Eve, 1913. So, well, let's take a walk to the cemetery. And I've done some research, thanks again to Find a Grave. Got some pictures, mostly of the kids, and some background information on them. We are here at Lakeview Cemetery here in Calumet. It's about 1.5 miles just west of town. And you can see here, this is the section where many of the victims of the disaster were buried. From what I understand, they had dug 3 large trenches and buried them side by side. This is 1913 Italian Hall disaster. 42 Protestant victims were interred in this section. December of 1913 is what it says. So 3 trenches, from what I understand. I don't know. I think there were probably a couple here, and then I think it's section 26. But I'm not able to find hardly any stones. I think a lot of them are unmarked. There are a few. There's a couple. I researched 7 or 8 stories with pictures from Find a Grave, but I'm only able to find a couple of the graves after doing a lot of searching. And there's not a lot of, considering the number of victims, many of the stones that you see here are other dates. They're not victims. So we can only try and piece together who's where. In Find a Grave, it shows the plot number, but it just does not mesh up with the map. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to walk a little bit. I'll go to the graves that I know. There are 2 or 3 that are researched victims that I have information on, and what I'm going to do is just post, edit, narrate this after I leave here when I get back to my Wisconsin home. So let's take a walk and we'll see what we can find. There is, I looked at a number of these and tried to match them up with the Find a Grave. Find a Grave does have the group of all of them, but a couple that I saw, 1913, did not match up. But here are a couple. It's an example of 1928, a mother. 1916. Now this one I know is one that we researched. Indeed it is, Manly. Okay, I'm back editing now, and we've got a lot of information here in front of us that I can relate to you, and this one is one that I recognize. Mother Alina, or Alina, I'm guessing it's Alina, and her son Wesley perished in the fire. Alina was 26 and little Wesley was only 4, and they didn't make it. She was the daughter of Gustav Raja and Anna Kujanpa. And again, I apologize if the pronunciations are off. Do the best we can here. She immigrated to the United States, where she met and married Herman Manley, who was a native here of Calumet. Again, it was called Red Jacket back then. Now, they had 2 other children, Nilo, whose name was adapted to Neil, and they would do that a lot, especially kids going to school. They would Americanize their names, and Wilfred, and they both lived till 2010. And Nilo was born in 1911, and Neil and Wilfred was born in 1913, ironically the same year. Herman was from Finland, whose name was originally spelled Mani, and here we see the gravestone of Alina's younger sister, Seta, who also died. And probably one of the saddest things, if this is not all sad, is Alina was pregnant at the time of her death. So as we walk along here, most of the gravestones, they're not of the victims. And again, they're buried in trenches. I guess most of them, I don't know if it was all of them or most of them, but you would think you'd see this line of close, like at Showman's Rest. It's just bam, 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 all the stones are, but not here. Maybe someday people will get together, and from the area here, it's going to be a lot of gravestones. But I've seen this like in Silver, in, where was it, in Colorado. They came back and they gave people a lot of just very simple, like Seta has very simple stones. So as we walk along, we're not really seeing any other. Well, there's a couple of more, 3 more we'll see, but in the meantime, we'll give you some background on some of the other, with pictures. Herman here, Herman Ala, who converted his name to Alan, he came to the United States in 1887 from Finland. He married Anna Hertita, who was from Norway. They got married on January 21st, 1893. They had 7 children. Reino, 1894 to 1950, he died at 50 years old, was a sergeant in the U.S. Army, World War I. We have William, who was born in 1896, and he died on May 28, 1955. He was also in the U.S. Army, World War I. We have George, we have Allie, we have Norman, Rupert, and young Irene Allen Hudson. She would go on to be married and live till 73, and ironically she was trapped in the disaster, but her father Herman saved her. He must have held her above his head. He was able to save young Irene. Her arm, though, was badly broken. She was pretty bruised up, but she lived. So quite the story. Probably the saddest, well, they're all sad, but the 3 little boys, Edwin, who was 7, Ellis, who was 9, and Aino, who was 10, of the Heikkinen family. And I think they're buried in another section. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get, but I do have a picture of their stone here from Find a Grave. And all 3 brothers, of course, died. They were the sons of Johan, who changed his name to John, John Flips Heikkinen, and Elda Gustava Niska, both immigrants from Finland. They'd married on September 9th, 1901, here in Calumet. At the time, like I said, it was called Red Jacket. And they had 6 children. the youngest being Lydia Mabel, who in 1913, ironically, she was born the same year. She lived till 1927 only because she was in a car crash. We'll get to that, but brother Axel, who was 11 at the time, he was trapped on the Italian Hall stairway, injured, but he did survive. It was said that Gustava was one who, and I was referring to this before, who's offered money. This was more public and outward, where she yelled back, "This is blood money." She refused to take the money from the Citizens Alliance, and they said that here at the cemetery, Gustava had to be held back from throwing herself onto the sons' graves. Imagine the three caskets, little caskets there, and she tried to jump on top of them. Just imagine the scene in your mind. But then if that's not all bad enough, I was referring to Lydia. When she was 23, she died July of 1937 in a car crash. Her head was crushed. Well, you can imagine, no seatbelts in those days, but she was survived by her husband and 2 children, and sadly also her parents, John and Gustava. I just imagine. Gustava died in 1945. She was 67, and John died in 1953. He was 74. So we see here the grave of Lydia Johanna Luoma. She was only 10 years old. She was the daughter of Ivar and Ida of Centennial Heights. And they're buried here, but in a different section, I believe in section 35. They have a large stone. But you look at her picture, Lydia, she looks much older. I mean, 10 years old. It must just be the picture, but very interesting. Now, as we continue on, we see the grave here of a little boy. His name was Edward Ritchie. Eddie, they called him. Takala, he was only 9 years old. He was the son of Henry and Mary Takala, or it might be Takola, of Larium. So just another child, one of many that perished. Another little boy whose grave I couldn't find, Uno Jokpai. He was 12 or 13 years old. He was the son of Samuel Jokpai and Matilda Wickpert Jokpai. Both parents, immigrants from Finland, no surprise there, married here in Red Jacket at the time, Calumet, in May of 1892, May 28th. They had Uno had 10 brothers and sisters. Arvo, half-brother, Francis, Heino, Mary, Wanord, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Aileen, Mildred, Edwin, Winifred, and Beatrice. Now, Aileen, Mildred, and Edwin also attended the Italian Hall Christmas party, but they survived. But very few of the people will move on. There's another one I found some pictures. Britta Kalunki, she was 42 years old. Britta was the daughter of Elias Petteri and Lisa Sarkela. She was the wife of Peter Kalunki, who was born in Finland. As of 1910, Britta was the mother of 9 children, 5 of whom were still living at that time when this all happened. Her daughter Anna died at age 1 in 1898. Her daughters Anna and Afia were killed with her at the Italian Hall. 5 of Britta's and Peter's children survived. They were all there. They survived. Later on, her husband Peter remarried in 1921 to Liza Elizabeth Gustava Sapala. Peter died in May 1939. Another victim here as we look at the other gravestones. Johann Emil Kaimunki, he was only 7 years old. Such a cute little guy. Well, they're all cute. He was the son of Heike, who had his name as Henry Kaimunki. He lived till 1947, and his wife Hilda Tovila, who lived till 1953. They were both, again, immigrants from Finland. Heike was a widower from a prior marriage. He and Hilda married on August 3rd, 1908. Now, little Johann, who didn't make it, I assume his brother Ino was there, was born in 1911, so he would have been about 2 years old. He only lived till 1936, but must have survived. Now, here is a grave that has a large monument, and I must have just missed it. It's, I believe, in section 24 here. I don't know how I could have missed it. I do believe that a lot of these are mismarked and Find a Grave. I don't know. But I did not see this unless I completely missed it. Mary was 10 years old. She's the daughter of Peter Kronjak and Mary Roseman. Parents lived till, father 1948, the mother passed in 1962. They were both immigrants from Austria, or maybe it was Croatia, both part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. At the time, the couple married on April 29th, 1902, here in Calumet, as I said before, called Red Jacket. It's a cool name for I should have kept it as, the miners took over and the Calumet Company. Let's name it after me, the Egos. I should have kept they should change it back to Red Jacket. Anyway, they have many siblings. We have Kate, Anne, Joseph, Peter, Stephanie, John, and twins George and Louis, and many of them lived to the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. Kate, who was 11 at the time, was with Mary, but she survived, so Mary was the only one, 10 years old, didn't make it. And now this is a particularly sad one here. Abram, who was 26 years old. Abram was the son of John Abram, Namala, and Lizzie Tepsa. His wife, Marie Elizabeth Wara, was born in 1891 in Finland. They were married here July 29th, 1911, right? Just more than a couple of years before this happened. They had one child, Rhino, born on June 29th, 1913. Elizabeth held Rhino over her head as she was being crushed. She and her husband suffocated. They did not make it, but she held him high above the pile. Just imagine the pile of bodies and just two arms, maybe just elbows, and maybe just her hands sticking out holding the poor little guy. And it's just heart-wrenching to save the baby or the child. And they did not make it. They're buried next to each other here. They did not find their grave. Rhino was raised by his mother's sister Hilma and her husband Peter Honka. And interestingly, Rhino took the Honka name, which I don't know if that was the custom back then, but to the adopted parents, I guess he was very, very young. But he served bravely in World War II. He died in 1950 at the young age of 36. And then lastly, we have Johann Peter Westola. He died, he was 48 years old. Another from Finland, John Peter, was born on July 22nd, 1865. He was the son of Pekka and Stina. And on April 15th, 1899, Johann married Hilda, and they were married in Finland. They had their first son on March 30th, 1900, Mauno Marcus Magnus. And on February 9th, 1902, another son, Pekka Seth Samuel, was born, but sadly he died on August 1st, 1902. And this all happened while they were in Finland, and then they decided to come over. So Johann, Hilda, and little Mauno, and again, I'm not sure the pronunciation, Mauno, they sailed on the SS St. Paul to New York, New York. They arrived on September 20th, 1902. However, they were detained. They were detained when they came for a day due to a problem with the doctor's certification. Now, Johann used a cane in 1913. People remember when the disaster happened. And it may be that he had to use it back then too. And it was possible he was questioned as he tried to enter the U.S. Now, you had to be of sound mind and body to enter the United States. That was kind of one of the edicts of customs. After the family was admitted, they went to Johan's uncle, a man named Abraham West, whose home was in the Finnish community of Savo, South Dakota, which is still there. And by December of the same year, 1902, the Westola family of three, little family, moved to Centennial Heights, Michigan. And there, Johan would later become a secretary bookkeeper at the Finnish Mutual Insurance Company in what was then called, again, Red Jacket, known as Calumet now. So Johan and Hilda's family began to grow. John Henrik was born May 16, 1903. Lori Leo Lawrence, or Lud, his name was changed, was born on December 24, 1904. Paavo Tomi, whose name was converted to Paul, December 25, 1906, and Carlo Emmanuel Carl, his name was adapted to Carl, came on January 24, 1909. Then they had twins, Hilma Sylvia and Emily Felice. And Hilma was changed to Wilma, and the spelling changed. They were both born on January 22, 1910. Now, sadly, Wilma died on January 27, 1910. They had a boy who died on February 13, 1911. He was stillborn, no name, and even more sadly, the other twin, Emily, died on March 6, 1911, of convulsions and enteritis. So Johann was at the Italian Hall with his sons Lawrence and Paul, who both survived. And he probably saved them and sacrificed his own life. So, as a lot of the parents, as all the parents would do. So that's the information I have as we look out. A lot of bare space here. A lot of missing gravestones, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys tell me if you're local. I'd be very curious to know, but I was kind of saddened to see that. Hope I'm not right. All right, everybody, we'll close on this story here. And there are a lot more stories on Find a Grave that you can find of these 73 souls. Thanks for tagging along. See you on the next one.